Hi, my name is Brian Foster. I was 4 years old and getting ready to go to the mall. My parents were across the street with my brother, and I was at the entrance of a neighbor's house. I was riding a big wheel, which is a very low plastic tricycle. My brother called out from across the street, "Hey, we're going to the mall," which back then was basically our Disneyland. So I rode down the driveway between two parked cars when another car came toward me. As I went between the cars, that car hit me, and I ended up underneath it. My big wheel got caught under the rear tire, which stopped me from being run over. The first thing I recall is everything going black, like a fade to a black screen. Then I remember opening my eyes and seeing myself with my eyes rolling back. Soon after, everything went black again, then returned. But this time I was sitting with someone. I was leaning against them, tilted to one side, and I could feel that person because I was pressed up against them. I thought, this must be a person. So I opened my eyes and my head was down, looking at the ground. When I opened them, I saw someone's hair, almost touching the ground. It was long and silver. And I also noticed the bottom of that person's robe. I tried to turn to look at the person, but instead of a face, their face was pure light. As I looked at them, I felt myself being drawn toward that light. We communicated a little, and I asked what had happened. I clearly remember not understanding why we weren't moving our lips. Yet we were still talking without words. As I was drawn closer to the face of this luminous figure, I began to see another world and instantly understood that in that world there was peace. There was no hate, no anger, no pain, and I wanted to go there. At that moment I wasn't sure what it was, but today I would call it heaven. That's when I realized I was out of my body. Something was different. The being basically told me it wasn't my time, but that I would return. I didn't fully understand at the time, nor do I remember everything we discussed, but we talked more. However, I can't recall those memories now. After that brief conversation, he said to me, "Stephen, lower your head. Everything will be okay." I did, and then I woke up surrounded by toys. A few days later, fast forward to when I was around 30 or 33 years old, I was driving my car. After the experience, I was, you could say, a bit reckless because I knew something had happened, but I couldn't fully remember the details. So I lived on the edge. I was driving really fast, about 70 miles per hour, when the car spun out on a curve, hit a pole, and then flipped 5 times before coming to a stop. During that time, I lost consciousness. The next thing I remember is being taken to the operating room, where they were going to perform surgery on my arm. I felt very anxious and wanted to get out of there. I was literally about to get up and leave when a wave of calm, peace, and safety washed over me. That feeling that everything was going to be all right. It flowed through my entire body from head to toe, and I instantly knew I would be fine. I lay back down and heard the same voice from the being, which I recognized as the voice that spoke to me when I was 4 years old. I didn't remember it clearly, but when I heard it again, I immediately knew what it was. The voice said the same thing. "Stephen, lower your head, everything is going to be okay." When that being spoke, something inside my mind just shifted. All that information about quantum physics, energy, and what we had discussed during that near-death experience when I was 4 years old. It was then that things began to open up, and I could access it. Now I had enough understanding to process it because at 4 years old, I wouldn't have been able to grasp what those things meant. Then the being showed me a field. It looked like a blueprint, and they told me it was the blueprint of creation, and that we were in the quantum field. They started explaining about all living beings, saying that each one has a blueprint in this field that can be accessed for healing, both physically and emotionally. This was our original blueprint, like love, with which we entered the world, like a file in a computer, representing my true self. Everything else had been built on top of that, and I could access that blueprint and retrieve it for healing. The next thing I remember is being inside what looked like a medicine wheel, and I was at the center. In my center, there was pure love. They began teaching me how we send our energy to experience reality. They showed me how the extensions of my heart reached out to the outer edge of this wheel and then returned. It was as if it circled through my consciousness, so I could experience reality. On the outer wheel, it was like a screen surrounding me, filled with memories and impressions, things I had done throughout my life up to that moment. They told me we could retrieve those memories with parts of our soul that we had released. We could recover them to heal and become more whole, closer to the original form we had when we entered this world. Later, I came to know this as ascension, soul retrieval. This being explained to me the nervous system, how our consciousness awakens, functioning like an operating system. And our subconscious is the hard drive that stores all the programs. Things like leaving my car keys when I get home, knowing how to ride a bike, and, unfortunately, also the trauma programs that make us react when we're in certain situations, feeling things similar to past experiences. That was important and key. I discovered that the plane was the key to healing those traumas because later I started applying these things. They showed me all this, teaching me about quantum physics, quantum entanglement, how we can send our energy and affect the energy of others, no matter the distance. I hadn't gone to university to learn any of this, which really scared the people around me. When I was coming out of that experience and going back to work, I was a store manager at GameStop. At that moment, an elderly woman fell outside my store. She hit the pavement and was in a lot of pain. It was the first time I realized I could heal or guide people to their own plane through quantum physics. She fell, was in a lot of pain, and I placed my hand on her back. She turned, looked at me, and said, "I feel all warm and pain-free." We were there for a few minutes. Some people came and helped her up. When I went back to work, I thought, that was really strange. I kept thinking about it over and over. I started to feel this energy in my center, comparable to the feeling of being a child on Christmas Eve. This energy began to guide me to various churches, trying to talk to people, seeking answers, things like that. Over time, I realized that I was looking for God outside of myself instead of within. I didn't find God in the church. To say the least, I started seeing silhouettes around me. They moved back and forth, some clearer, others darker. Then they began to communicate, and I couldn't switch off that communication. I couldn't stop the voices in my head, and I could feel pressure on the side of my head whenever it intensified. It took me a while to understand it. At first, I was very scared because I had never experienced anything like that before. I didn't sleep for days, and then I realized that those images were projections of myself, transmitted into this unified field. The unified field is basically created by all living beings. It's a field where we are all connected, without separation, although we tend to separate ourselves. Everything here is made of atoms vibrating at different frequencies. In this field, there was actually no separation. We were all the same because we are not these bodies. We are the energy controlling these bodies. That is our true essence. We're here to have experiences and feel all the emotions, the full range of what it means to be in dense matter, in order to learn something we couldn't as pure energy. Then I began to realize that all those images were projections of myself transmitted onto this screen. And some of them, while communicating with me, weren't very kind. Because I wasn't kind to myself growing up, they started to say many of the same things I had said, very self-critical and self-destructive thoughts. Until I decided it was enough, and I needed to change my energy to release those parts of my personality that existed within my consciousness. I had to start introducing different energies, and that's when things really shifted. When I began taking responsibility for what was inside me and reconnecting with my inner child through nature and other exercises, my nervous system had contracted so much that I had to open it up again. That's crucial, because we truly exchange our identity as energy. We are born as energy, the energy of love seeking the approval of others through other people. So it became important for me to reclaim all that energy I had scattered in the field. People began coming to me for various reasons: healing, removing dark entities, things like that. In a way, I had solved the puzzle by sitting with that being of light. Later, I learned it was an angel, or what I came to understand as an Elohim, who taught me about our creation and about how sacred everything here is, how sacred this place is for having this experience. This being also taught me that every living being is part of God, part of the source. And how we treat others is essentially how we treat ourselves. Everything is connected. During that near-death experience, I felt unity with everything and instantly understood that all religions are the same, just different definitions created by people, but at their core, they are all one. There is no separation